The world in which we live is filled with potential, innumerable success stories, motivational speeches, and social media postings inspire us to have great dreams and follow our passions. Yet underneath all of this possibility lies a well-known fight to succeed. Wonderful things, but many people feel too exhausted or uninspired to take the initial step. Characterize themselves as ambitious yet lethargic, demonstrating a disconnect between the D they feel within and the sluggishness they encounter in their daily lives. You can find yourself thinking about creating a novel because of how aggravating an apparent contradiction can be. Launching your own company, picking up a new skill, or becoming in peak physical condition, you see the ultimate result. Vibrantly produced books, a thriving business, the happy sound of music, or a better, stronger physique. But when it comes time to act, everything else appears more tempting to you. May use your energy on simple diversions like social media browsing, binge-watching television, or why do you keep rearranging little chores that don't get you any closer to your bigger goal? Does this happen, or are you destined to be in a never-ending loop of procrastination because you are irrevocably lazy? According to productivity theory and psychological studies, a large portion of what seems like lethargy is really a reaction to feeling overpowered or threatened when a goal appears to be very big, as writing hundreds of pages, losing a lot of weight, or becoming proficient in a difficult mental talent. Believes it to be a possible threat or an unsustainable use of resources that the mind has been conditioned for by evolution. Putting comfort and safety first encourages you to take more quick, less intimidating actions. Thankfully, ambitious but lethargic people do not have to be your constant source of satisfaction. If directed, the same mentality that shuns hardship may learn to welcome doable obstacles. Thus, the secret is to modify your strategy and begin with modest goals. Then you believe, establish habits rather than depending solely on willpower, and use strategies that reduce the first discomfort of beginning this lengthy conversation. We will look at the psychology of aspiration. Habit formation and laziness are moving way beyond basic motivating. Next, we'll examine how seeming indolence frequently conceals more serious problems like as perfectionism or fear of failing. We will next go over tried and true methods, reducing the size of activities and applying the 2-minute rule to build routines. Rewarding oneself and cultivating a positive outlook will assist you in overcoming chronic. Using real-world examples, we will examine procrastination and how anybody may convert big aspirations into regular everyday activities. You will ultimately have a comprehensive plan for conquering, maintaining momentum, and procrastinating. Don't require you to be flawless. You only must be constant and kind with yourself as you go. In other words, your ambition may become a reality with understanding and rerouting, not in spite of your difficulties. The phrase ambitious but lazy refers to the paradox that both of them comprehend. More prevalent than most people realize, it combines a striking contrast with a desire for something important, with a seeming unwillingness to devote the necessary time and effort. Yet this dynamic is more complex than it first appears. Examining how ambition and appearing lethargy connect shows how our biological and psychological makeup might unintentionally interfere with our greater goals and the survival instinct and energy conservation from an evolutionary perspective. Humans are inclined to save energy during times when food was limited and there were many dangers. Despite the far higher level of security offered by modern life, labor without assurance of return might be risky. Comfort. Our brains continue to function according to the instruction to prevent needless stress when you encounter a goal that appears as big as a mountain. Your mind can interpret it as threatening as it imagines a significant mental resource. Investment. Physical or emotional without yielding results right away. which is why browsing social media or viewing a humorous concert could seem more alluring than devoting yourself to writing your first chapter or going on a difficult conducting. The latter tasks promises a sense of fulfillment or delayed payoff, of advancement, but without the instant comfort our brains so desperately need. Therefore, the term lazy may simply be an indication of the brain's ill-advised attempt to keep you safe and happy in the short term. The phrase, all or nothing trap, refers to a prevalent mindset that encourages avoidance is all or nothing. You may say, I want to be in shape, and I can picture the perfect plan that includes lengthy daily exercises and flawless diets. Seeing the vast gap between your existing situation and the imagined version of yourself, feel overburdened by the underlying pressure that there is no need in completing anything at all if I am unable to accomplish it now. This kind of thinking increases the stakes and makes even the smallest activity seem inadequate, which leads to psychological. Doing nothing is simpler than doing a little and feeling like it's not enough. Sufficient apprehension about failing, and the illusion of excellence, another element concealed underneath a fear of failing, is the root cause of seeming lethargy. If you never start, you never fail. Your self-perception is unaffected, and this dread frequently coexists with perfectionism, and the idea of creating anything less than flawless might be so upsetting that you don't want to start altogether. In these situations, being lazy is more important, more of a coping strategy than a lack of drive to avoid the hurt of not reaching your peak ideals, the allure of quick satisfaction offered by contemporary technology. An endless supply of immediate incentives, ranging from amusing movies to continuous online updates whenever you see something amusing or receive a notice. Experience a brief dopamine rush as opposed to the more gradual and subdued fulfillment of pursuing a broad objective. These fleeting moments of enjoyment are alluring, but your long-term aspirations may be dwarfed by this environment, which offers instant satisfaction with a single click, is indicative of intrinsic laziness rather than of a layout that takes use of your brain's reward systems, frequently at the price of consistent work on worthwhile endeavors that reframe indolence as a problem that can be solved. Issue: once you realize that being lazy sometimes conceals more serious problems, such as dread. You can deal with perfectionism, cognitive overload, or energy conservation. Fundamental reasons as opposed to embracing a self-deprecating narrative of, I'm too lackadaisical. You might say that I'm afraid of or feel overpowered by the size of this assignment. What if I attempt and fail? These rephrased statements can result in more beneficial tactics like dividing objectives into manageable chunks or getting assistance to overcome limiting beliefs. This reframing alone can be freeing when you stop, identifying as defective, and start seeing your difficulty as a normal human reaction to stress and strain. And with that knowledge, you're more receptive to the useful, scientifically supported techniques that may change the way you behave on a regular basis. Learning is more important than fixing an intrinsic flaw. To break down huge goals and deal with your mind in a way that promotes growth. 3. One of the quickest and most efficient ways to deal with overload is to use the power of little steps. Make your assignments as simple as approachable as you can. At first, they could seem little, so why write a single paragraph if your aim is a whole book? So why take a little stroll if you want to run a marathon? The cognitive and the inspiration that comes from taking on a task that seems manageable instead, then, when you establish a huge objective, it becomes impossible to overcome cognitive overload, such as authoring a multi-hundred-page novel, starting a business, or producing an intricate art portfolio. The simple idea. Knowing what you have to accomplish might cause your brain to get concerned about the perseverance and discipline needed to convince. By concentrating on the smallest move you may do to delay, You lessen the sensation of writing a single phrase or creating a quick outline doesn't feel like a risky use of your time or energy. The specter of avoidance is more likely to start and continue after you do. Reduces the momentum-building power of micro-wins, which are tiny achievements that have a psychological impact that is out of proportion to their magnitude. Going for a little run or writing a single paragraph might not change your life right away, but the rush of every time you feel it, the resulting pride and satisfaction may be a strong incentive. Regardless of success, you strengthen the practice of acting over the course of several days and weeks. These small victories add up to give you the impetus you need to take on increasingly difficult projects. A cycle of positive reinforcement, you begin to perceive yourself differently. For example, I am someone who writes daily, or I am someone who... This self-image adjustment is essential because it replaces the previous narrative of I never follow through when you work out frequently, or I'm too lazy. But as you gain confidence, bigger jobs don't seem as daunting and you're willing to. Putting out effort broadens the examples in life. Little steps may be used in almost every creative situation. If you want to complete a whole art portfolio, projects begin with a single drawing. Your drawings gradually build up into a body of art. Fitness. If the concept of long-distance running is intimidating, so start with a little morning stroll and then work your way up to longer distances. Walks or start a light jog to develop your skills instead of studying and focus on a single chord change or a whole song on one instrument in a single day. Little portion of a song about your professional or academic development if you choose to seek a higher education or broaden your knowledge. Start by reading a brief article or composing a basic financial goals. Save a little portion of your money at first rather than a large portion right once. Amount regularly. The practice of saving money is frequently more significant than the amount at first, the compound effect. A common mistake is to underestimate the combined effect of little efforts made on a regular basis, but a brief, daily practice could appear insignificant to the math of compounding. Shows that if you keep adding little increments, the theory may be described in words rather than numbers. Sum increases far faster than you may anticipate, and what started off as one paragraph every day might quickly turn into a whole book. What started off as a quick stroll might develop into a vigorous workout regimen. This idea is the cornerstone of long-term change, and it all depends on your readiness to start. Practical advice for putting into practice short, doable stages. Tiny steps, identify the smallest action that can be taken, and ask yourself what the absolute writing a few words could be the very least I could accomplish today to advance. Clean up a single draw or practice a single chord, then rejoice right away. As soon as you finish your micro-task, give yourself a little treat or a moment of pride. This victory lap helps the habit loop. Record your success using a habit monitoring, chart, or diary. Seeing the results of your daily efforts might motivate you to keep going, especially on days when you're feeling low on motivation. As soon as the tiniest work seems completely doable, take into consideration raising it a little bit. The goal is steady development rather than abrupt changes that might restore the feeling of overwhelm. By changing the definition of progress from making abrupt changes to by taking little steps, you avoid the paradox of mental resistance that sometimes accompanies grandiose aspirations. Is that by setting smaller goals, you frequently get bigger and more durable outcomes than if you had attempted to deal with everything at once. 4. Creating procedures to fight the loss of willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. Something that most of us have personally experienced. You can begin your day with the greatest of intentions to have a nutritious breakfast. Take on a difficult task, and exercise, only to get worn out or susceptible to temptation throughout the day. which is not only a particular shortcoming but rather reflects a universal concept called as every time you exercise, you experience decision fatigue or a loss of mental vitality, self-discipline, the limitations of willpower. When you just use it to attain your goals, you run the risk of becoming weary and inconsistent every time you oppose a donut, whether faced with a challenging assignment or a challenging argument. You spend a little portion of that limited reserve before nightfall, since it may seem hard to muster. The willpower to put forth extra effort, like running or sitting down to focus on that long-term goal. The ensuing irritation might perpetuate the vicious cycle, so I suppose I'm merely lazy. The strength of routine and habit routines and habits have great strength because they eliminate the necessity for deliberate choices. Once a behavior becomes second nature, you carry it out with little cerebral work. Consider how you likely wash your teeth every day without thinking about it. You may use this similar idea for duties pertaining to your morning objectives if you're having trouble or need a lot of inspiration. Routines. A regular morning routine is advised by several productivity gurus. Since you're, by planning the most crucial or imaginative chores for the morning, mental energy is usually greater. You may maximize your mental state in the morning before it is undermined by everyday stressors and, conversely, nighttime rituals. Reading, meditation, or doing some light stretching before bed might help you get ready for restful sleep. When these habits become second nature, you will be able to replenish your brain supplies for the next day. They serve as the cornerstone of your everyday existence. Rather than making a fresh decision every day about whether or not to take action, you virtually automatically reserving your meager willpower for unforeseen difficulties, creating efficient routines. Establishing a routine may seem intimidating if you are already feeling overburdened, but begin with only one action. Pick one important objective and one activity that is closely related to a main goal, like writing, working out, or picking up a new skill. Connect your chosen activity to something you already do to anchor it. For example, if you have coffee every morning, you could decide to write for a little while right after. If you plan, complete your cup, simplify the surroundings, and set up your area to support your routine. The night before your workout, place your workout attire in a noticeable location if you plan to remain adaptable and have your laptop or notebook open on your desk. If you skip your routine on a day that is very hectic or stressful, life happens. Instead of giving up, go back to it as soon as you can. The measure of your capacity to persevere over time, not your ability to never give up, is what defines your success. Using perfection routines as a safeguard when you're feeling really motivated, not feel the need for routines as urgent, but when your passion wanes, maybe the habit might serve as a safety net if you had a restless night or are coping with work-related stress. Whatever behavior you choose without considering the advantages and disadvantages at the time, this constancy shields you from mood swings or ephemeral desire-boosting self-efficacy, which is your conviction in your own abilities, grows stronger as routines help you. Your increased self-efficacy turns into a feedback loop that increases your chances of success. The more you follow the program, the more confident you are in your ability to carry out your plans, and over time, it gets simpler to include more layers of effective behavior by decreasing your need on willpower. For every small step you take frees up your mind to solve problems and think creatively instead of using all your when struggling to decide whether to start. You may use that energy to further your job and take on the challenging tasks that genuinely make a difference with your huge goals. 5. The 2-minute rule. Reducing the entry barrier is one of the most surprisingly straightforward yet incredibly powerful strategies for the 2-minute rule is the key to overcoming procrastination. Simple, instead of committing to a large, time-consuming work, Make a self-promise to complete the assignment for just a few minutes, and if you decide to quit after that little period, you will almost certainly find that after you start, it is simpler to maintain going. Why the brain's intimidation reaction makes beginning the most difficult portion, sometimes brought on by the expectation of how difficult or lengthy a project would be. Whether it be addressing an important research paper, the narrative you tell yourself about cleaning a whole home, or creating a company strategy. How much work it will need might become the largest obstacle if you only put in a small amount of effort at first. Minutes you spend doing anything for that little amount of time after dismissing this internal alert seemed too unimportant to ignore instances of the 2-minute. Rather, of telling yourself that you must produce dozens of pages, make a commitment. 2. You can find yourself effortlessly crossing that boundary after only a few minutes at the keyboard because once you are in the, if you need to, flow, departing might seem more like a pause in momentum than carrying on with home chores. Choose a tiny area of a room to clean or declutter, and promise yourself that you will just spend a little amount of time there. After you notice quick results from the initial exercise, you will frequently find yourself working on a second or third region instead. As blood begins, instead of committing to a lengthy run, do a quick warm-up or a quick series of stretches. Going farther might make reading or studying much more manageable when confronted with when a daunting textbook or lengthy article states that you will just read one paragraph. The initial tension fades as you get interested in what will happen next, or how the idea gains traction, and when you begin a task, your brain uses a mechanism similar to physics inertia. The same concept applies. Unless another force acts upon an item in motion, it tends to stay in motion. You may assume psychologically that because I've already started, I might as well continue. This is it's true if you pause to observe how it feels to become interested frequently. The dread that had before grown vanishes or drastically reduces, allowing you to halt a vital part of the 2-minute. The rule is giving yourself actual permission to stop after that little period if you really want to. Knowing that you may quit eases the mental strain by eliminating the feeling of guilt that you must continue. Ironically, being stuck frequently results in a resolve to keep the 2-minute rule is considerably more effective when combined with additional tactics. Together with the previously indicated tiny steps, the 2-minute, in essence, dedication is the smallest possible routine. Using consistent application, you could set aside a specific time each day to complete your 2-minute action, reinforce consistency, and reward yourself in a small but meaningful way after finishing it. You could also give yourself a brief break to eat a snack or do something else you enjoy. Once you have taken the first 6 steps, overcoming the fear of failure and embracing imperfection, the 2-minute rule helps you rewire your attitude toward tasks that once felt too big to handle. This gentle, approachable method is a great place to start for anyone caught in a cycle of procrastination and self-criticism, because it turns the mountain of effort into a molehill and taps into the power of momentum to carry you further. Frequently, laziness is a cover for a deeper emotional barrier, the fear that you won't succeed or that you'll create something flawed and face harsh criticism from others or yourself. This fear can be so strong that it prevents you from ever beginning. It's easier to call yourself too busy or lazy than to acknowledge that you're scared to try and fall short of perfectionists' standards. When you hold yourself to unreasonably high standards, you foster an atmosphere where everything less than flawless is seen as a failure, since true perfection is unachievable, which may be a huge obstacle to true growth. The hallmark of a fixed mindset is the belief that your abilities should be fully developed and flawless if you are truly good enough. The growth mindset, on the other hand, is the antidote to this mindset, which holds that abilities and talents can be developed through consistent effort. This perspective accepts mistakes, setbacks, and challenges, viewing them as stepping stones, rather than insurmountable barriers. Every time you encounter difficulties, you get new knowledge, and every time you produce something flawed, you acquire understanding on how to do better, moving from either I succeed right away or I fail. 2. I'm learning and developing, and every effort may relieve a great deal of mental burden. Reinterpreting failure as feedback is a game changer. When an endeavor fails or your first drafts are unpolished, it can be easy to interpret it as proof of your basic inadequacy. But in reality, failure frequently contains the seeds of success because it reveals what does not work. Important details for honing your strategy. Many well-known entrepreneurs, artists, and innovators attribute their success to the lessons they learned from their repeated failures. Consciously accepting imperfections. One way to break free from perfectionism is to intentionally practice imperfection. For example, you could commit to writing a bad first draft or producing a series of sketches that you recognize as purely experimental. By lowering the stakes, you can free your creativity and find it easier to maintain momentum while you can still edit or refine later. You have also made a significant break from the all-or-nothing mentality that stymies so many ambitious people. You may lessen your fear of failing by performing little bravery or self-exposure exercises. You may upload a little creative or show a buddy your work in progress. Online article that makes clear that it's a rough sketch over time. You come to understand that the world does not end when you display imperfections. You could get constructive criticism or inspiration that motivates you to continue overcoming obstacles. Redefining success is ultimately the most empowering step. Rather than tying success to an external standard of perfection, consider tying it to consistent effort and personal growth. If success means that I wrote for a short while today and that I slightly improved my craft, you open the door to daily victories. This contradicts the narrative that you must wait until your work is perfect before allowing it to be seen. Meanwhile, if success requires you to win a big prize or receive widespread recognition, you make it easy to feel inadequate by concentrating on the process rather than the result. When you let go of the need to do everything flawlessly, a sense of freedom follows, and you realize that the true obstacle was not your incapacity or laziness, but the pressure to never fail. By allowing yourself to make mistakes and create imperfectly, you give yourself the space to flourish. The shift not only helps you get started, but it also helps you persevere through the unavoidable ups and downs of any meaningful endeavor. 7. The significance of reward systems. Although pursuing intrinsic fulfillment is noble, humans are programmed to seek rewards. The delight of learning or mastery via creativity. The truth is that extrinsic reinforcement has a powerful effect on our brains as well. Why rewards matter from a neurological perspective. Rewards cause the release of feel-good chemicals that improve your mood and reinforce the behavior that leads to the reward. This is especially true in the early stages of developing new habits, when your intrinsic motivation may not have fully blossomed. A well-designed reward system can transform a task from something you dread into something you look forward to, or at least tolerate more happily. Consider how a remark or a tiny reward may make your day and inspire you to continue doing whatever it is that made you feel good. You may create consistent habits linked to your objectives and reward kinds by consciously putting this idea into practice. There are several types of awards, each with unique benefits and possible drawbacks. Extrinsic rewards can be tangible items, but intrinsic rewards, which are the most sustainable since they don't depend on external variables, can take time to develop if the task is initially challenging or unfamiliar. Examples of intrinsic rewards include self-satisfaction, pride in your craftsmanship, or the pure joy of learning something new. Even if extrinsic motivators, such as enjoyable hobbies or social rewards like recognition or praise, can be effective, especially in the beginning, depending only on them runs the danger of overshadowing the development of your internal motivation. Usually, a balanced strategy is the most effective. For example, if you want to do a quick workout every day, you might give yourself a few minutes of your favorite show, or a small soothing ritual like a warm shower with music you enjoy. Over time, your brain starts to associate the effort of the workout with the positive feeling you get after working out and the accompanying treatment. In order to create an effective reward system, first choose a behavior you want to reinforce, like writing, studying, exercising, or practicing a skill. Then, choose a reward that is both enticing enough to feel like a treat without becoming unsustainable. Gamifying your objectives is an additional strategy. Several programs that track habits employ streaks, points, and badges to fuel your quest. For this approach works well with other reward systems since it allows you to see your progress every day. You keep up your streak, which might act as a tiny reward. While rewards might boost your productivity, it's crucial to avoid becoming totally reliant on them. Instead, write down your accomplishments in a notebook or mark each day on a calendar to remind yourself that you are moving in the right direction. Ideally, you will gradually acquire a sense of internal fulfillment from taking pride in each finished draft, relishing the information you acquire from consistent study, or feeling the physical vitality that comes from regular exercise. By adjusting how and when you reward yourself, you may maintain an interesting and sustainable process that honors the process rather than simply the result, which is sometimes disregarded. External incentives are tools, not the end goal. Nuance is rewarding the process rather than just the outcome. For example, rather of celebrating when you finish a book manuscript, celebrate each writing session or each brief chapter. This way, you won't have to wait to feel pleased of yourself until you've lost a substantial amount of weight. With a well-considered reward system in place, you avoid the trap of viewing your goals as onerous obligations. This approach keeps you motivated at every stage by acknowledging the reality that big accomplishments are the culmination of many small, consistent efforts. Over time, a little bit of positive reinforcement follows each tiny advancement. When you strategically use rewards, they can be just what you need to get started and keep up your commitment during the early, more vulnerable stages of creating a lasting habit, consistency over perfection, and create sustainable change. The task itself may become intrinsically rewarding, a source of fulfillment that no longer heavily depends on outside threats. The quest for perfection can undermine consistency by encouraging an all-or-nothing mentality, where you insist on flawless execution every time any stumble can feel like a deal breaker and you quit altogether because you believe you have ruined your streak or revealed your lack of ability. Consistency is the linchpin that holds all these strategies together. Even the best intentions and painstakingly crafted plans will falter without regular repeated action. This is why consistency outperforms occasional excellence. When you contrast a situation where you work out modestly many days a week with one where you occasionally push yourself to the limit, the long-term advantages of the regular habit are significantly larger. Repetition and gradual adaptation are beneficial to the body and mind on both a psychological and physical level. Because life is unpredictable, perfection is impossible. For example, you might get a cold, have a friend drop by unexpectedly, or have an exceptionally demanding project at work. In these situations, sticking to your plan exactly might not be possible, but you can still take a small step, like a shorter writing session. Consistency helps you gain confidence in yourself by demonstrating that you are someone who keeps your word, even if it is small. When you adopt the mindset that every day is an opportunity to make some progress toward your goal, No matter how small, a quick at-home workout or a brief period of meditation in between obligations relieves you of the burden of thinking that one mistake negates all the work you have done so far over weeks and months. Your consistent, if occasionally imperfect, efforts add up to significant progress in tracking and reflecting. Whether you use a straightforward calendar, a bullet journal, or a digital habit tracking tool, consistency is best maintained when you keep track of your progress in plain sight. It may be really inspiring to put your everyday efforts in writing. Every checkmark or remark serves as concrete evidence of your dedication. Periodically go over your logs to see trends. Are there days or periods when you struggle more? Are you becoming better at anything faster? This continuous introspection helps you to improve your plan and make it more resilient. Honoring milestones. Little, everyday activities eventually add up to big milestones. For example, you may have finished a particular chapter in your writing project or advanced to a new level of proficiency in your musical training. Acknowledging and celebrating these milestones keeps you motivated and keeps the goal from feeling like an endless grind. As previously mentioned, rewarding consistency can be particularly effective if the reward is something you genuinely value. The extended perspective. When you put consistency above perfection, you take a long-term view and realize that every practice day, no matter how short or imperfect, adds to a compounding effect. This reframe enables you to persevere through setbacks and continue on your path even when your motivation wanes or your circumstances temporarily worsen. Your self-perception steadily changes as a result of your continuous activities. You develop true confidence by changing your perspective from one of someone who occasionally tries new things and then gives up to one who consistently advances. This is based on your steady daily development rather than on idealistic aspirations. Enhancement number 9. The part that self-compassion and attitude play underlying all of these useful tools, little steps, routines, 2-minute pledges, and incentive schemes. The foundation is crucial. A growth-oriented mindset and a supportive inner dialogue can transform even small steps into transformative catalysts. On the other hand, if you constantly criticize yourself for not meeting some unrealistic standard, the friction you create can undermine every other strategy. A developing mentality as opposed to a fixed attitude. In contrast to a fixed mindset, which implies your abilities are largely predetermined and that any struggle is evidence you lack what it takes, a growth mindset, as popularized by psychologists, research is based on the belief that abilities can be refined over time through effort and learning. When you adopt this perspective, challenges become opportunities for growth and mistakes become opportunities for improvement. This unfavorable narrative might encourage avoidance and embarrassment, which are frequently mistaken for laziness. Self-compassion in action. By acknowledging that setbacks are a natural part of life, self-compassion means not putting yourself down after every missed workout or day you don't write, but rather treating yourself with the same understanding and kindness you would give a close friend. When you remark, "I had a tough day, but tomorrow is another chance," or "I got distracted today, but at least I learned what might be my triggers for avoidance," you are demonstrating that you do not allow guilt or self-criticism to stop you from trying. Constant self-compassion encourages emotional resilience. When you are resilient, a difficult day or even a difficult week doesn't turn into a chronic state of despair. Instead, you maintain the mental and emotional stamina required to keep going. Optimistic self. Your motivation and sense of self are seriously impacted by the language you use in your thoughts. If your inner monologue is constantly critical, telling you that you are unproductive, lazy, or doomed to fail, it undermines your ability to maintain any productive habits. Replace these negative thoughts with positive ones. Even if it takes some time or I'm making progress, I can learn this. Writing down negative ideas as they come to mind and then refuting them with facts or more impartial viewpoints over time will help you develop the habit of self-coaching rather than self-bullying, even if it takes longer than I had planned. The importance of support networks. When you're not working alone, it's easier to keep a positive outlook and practice self-compassion. Friends, mentors, coworkers, or community groups can act as a reflective mirror, encouraging you and correcting your own judgments when they get too harsh. They also remind you that many people have overcome similar obstacles. Sharing your difficulties in a secure setting might lessen the embarrassment that sometimes comes with. The decision frequently rests on whether you view yourself as a friend or an enemy. Apes labels like sloth can become your ally, but in the end, your perspective determines how you perceive each day's efforts and every hurdle. You can face obstacles with patience and curiosity, or with dread and self-reproach. When you cultivate that internal environment, your external behaviors are much more likely to align with your most valued values. The steps outlined in the previous sections, such as breaking tasks into smaller pieces, creating routines, and using rewards, rely heavily on your willingness to be patient and fair with yourself. Aspirations. 10 real-world examples and practical applications that highlight these ideas. Let's look at some real-world situations that show how you could mix modest actions, routines, and incentives. The 2-minute rule and a kind attitude. Starting a creative project. Let's say you've always wanted to make a web comic or art portfolio but have never had the time. The difference between sketching or drawing occasionally and producing a complete body of work seems enormous, but breaking it down into short bursts of time each morning, even if it's just a few minutes, will help you establish a regular creative routine. Set out your art supplies the night before to reduce friction, and reward yourself with a small treat after finishing your daily sketch, such as your favorite podcast or a special beverage you save for those sessions. Keep in mind that rough drawings are a necessary part of the process and strive for exploration rather than flawless works of art. Your everyday efforts build up over time, and before you realize it, you have produced hundreds of sketches. At that point, you have enough material to start seeing your development. Enhancing physical health. Let's say you want to get healthier by working out more and eating better, but you keep putting off making the tiny changes you need to. Start with a quick daily walk around the block. This can feel so insignificant that you do not resist the routine. For example, you might walk immediately after lunch or after returning from work, making it a habit. On days when you do not feel like walking, make a promise to yourself that you will only walk for a short while. More often than not, you will continue. Record your walks in a diary, and after a predetermined amount of regular entries, reward yourself with a new book, some workout equipment, or a fun excursion that promotes self-compassion. Recognize that you might miss your stroll on some days, but instead of giving up, you forgive yourself and go back as soon as you can. In a few weeks, the walk might turn into a quick jog, and you might begin looking at healthier food options. Additionally, the person you used to be who skips exercises changes into someone who appreciates consistent activity. Learning a new professional skill. Imagine that you are scared of a professional course or certification that could advance your career. The course material seems long and intimidating, and you keep putting it off. To overcome this, break it down into manageable chunks. Instead of reading a chapter all at once, try reading a few paragraphs each day or finishing a quick online lesson. Set your laptop to launch the course website automatically, or put your study materials in a conspicuous position during a designated window, such as an early morning or a quiet time after supper. 2-minute rule. Tell yourself, "I'll study for just a few minutes." Frequently, when you begin, you continue reading for rewards. After every session, treat yourself to a little, enjoyable break. You may watch a brief episode of a program or play a fast game. If the lessons seem unclear, remind yourself that learning a new skill is never linear and that errors and misunderstandings are normal. Stepping Stones progressively moves you through the course with a brief daily study routine, transforming an overwhelming educational mountain into a series of small hills that build your finances. Lastly, think about someone who wants to reduce spending and save money but is intimidated by the thought of creating a budget. Start with simple steps. Even a small weekly contribution may create a habit routine. Automate the transfer of that amount from your primary account to a savings account on a predetermined schedule. This way, you don't need to use willpower to remember or justify it. Monitor the progress of your funds, and rejoice milestones might be reached when you hit a threshold that has importance for you, without obsessing about numbers or even the idea of a threshold. Give yourself a tiny reward or engage in an enjoyable activity that you genuinely like, and acknowledge that you don't need to make major changes, cuts all at once. Instead of a complete overhaul, it's about steady, incremental improvement. Over time, saving becomes second nature, and you may either steadily raise the amount or look into investment choices like fitness regimens or creative projects. Instructive goals or monetary gains. These illustrations highlight how the small step concept regimented practices. Transformational outcomes may be achieved with little effort and gentle self-talk. Each example demonstrates how one achievable step at a time may lead one from goal to success. Conclusion E11. Igniting your dreams. Flame. It is not necessary for ambition and laziness to coexist. It is frequently a superficial manifestation of more profound psychological tendencies like overwhelming dread of failing and the brain's predilection for. By identifying these underlying elements, you may develop a more compassionate, strategic approach to your objectives that gently moves you ahead rather than criticizing you for not accomplishing enough during this prolonged investigation. Comfort over effort. Numerous important topics have surfaced. Little actions. By incorporating desired behaviors into daily or weekly routines, you free yourself from constantly needing motivation and make consistency the rule rather than the exception. Bite-sized tasks also make it easier to begin and reduce intimidation. They build momentum through micro wins, gradually leading you to the larger accomplishment you envision. The rule of 2 minutes. By lowering the barrier to entry to the point where you hardly notice any mental resistance, deciding to work on something for a short time frequently overcomes procrastination. Accepting flaws, realizing that errors and failures are a necessary component of any meaningful progress allows you to attempt without the debilitating burden of perfectionism. With a growth mentality, mistakes become teaching opportunities rather than failures. Systems of rewards. Your brain is encouraged to link effort to favorable results by giving you little, meaningful incentives. This can be particularly useful when designing routines that do not yet reward consistency over perfection. The capacity to consistently show up, even if circumstances need you to dial back your efforts on some days, is essential for meaningful development. Attitude and self-compassion. A constructive internal conversation based on the conviction that you can develop and learn builds resilience. Self-criticism typically results in burnout or self-sabotage, even if it may first appear inspiring. When these tactics are combined, the result is a change in identity. You stop being someone who dreams but does nothing, and instead become someone who does a little bit consistently, faces imperfection with curiosity, and maintains routines, not through grim willpower, but through enduring habit. Loops over time, the small steps you take become exponential growth, and your formerly unachievable dreams start to come true. As you proceed, keep in mind that you don't need to wait for the ideal time to start. Even if your calendar is full or your energy is low, you can always make a small effort that, when done daily, is what ultimately fuels the flame of your goals until it is strong enough to light the way forward. If you are unsure, go over the concepts you have studied here again. If activities still seem overwhelming, break them down even further. Improve your routines and incentive structures to keep them interesting and motivating. And look for friends or supportive groups that have similar goals. Above all, be gentle and patient with yourself. The goal is not to eliminate leisure or relaxation, but to direct your days toward the things that are truly important to you, free from the guilt and frustration of unrealized potential. Every day, every little step fans the embers of your ambition until they become a steady flame, and from that glow your most treasured dreams can take shape in the real world. Reaching a big ambition is as much about cultivating your mindset as it is about accumulating tasks completed step by step, action by action.